Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast with me, your host. As always your host, David Chambers. And yeah, we're back for another really in-depth episode that really touches on something I see a lot in a lot of men and also see in a lot of women. It's a father wound that is developed through our childhoods, through a lack of father being around at all, through a lack of fathering from a father or from a dysfunctional father. And from that, we make certain decisions as a child, which then continue into adulthood and they surface in various ways. And I'm joined by Kevin Benevides from The Canvas Within on Instagram to really get into that, to really get into what is the father wound, how does it show up in our lives? Like, what's the effect of having an absent father? The sort of emotional distancing that we create. Like, how do we struggle to deal with our emotions if we've got a father wound? How do we seek replacement fathers? Maybe that's in the media or in our own lives, and like how we can find good role models and move through some of this emotional trauma that really gets in the way of our ability to, be connected human beings to ourselves and to the people we meet and create the sort of relationships we really desire. So, those are some really poignant parts of the episode, some bits that are really important, some stuff I've had to work through myself actually around this stuff. And Kevin does a lot of work with nice guys, and nice guys often, there's definitely a father wound there with nice guys, almost always, to be honest, that I've come across when I've worked in, even for, some of that stuff showed up in myself. But just before we get into the episode, I'm going to let you know about a few workshops I've got coming up. So I've got a masculinity workshop that's on the 23rd of February. This is a brand new workshop. It's going to be really awesome because it's really about the various aspects of masculinity. What is toxic masculinity? Why? What are toxic behaviors? But also how to have healthy, connected behaviors. The sort of behaviors that we would look at ourselves and be proud of. Like, how can we embody those? And also, how are some of these toxic behaviors very subtle that are in our lives, that sort of thing. So some really important parts around that's in that workshop. And again, I've already had quite a lot of people sign up for it. So please, find the link below with all the workshops and links below for you to find them. I've also got a Tantra workshop coming up called Tantra for Solo. I'm running that with Orsa. That is on the 16th of Feb. Again, we've been running this for about a year and a half now. We're getting some amazing reviews. People really love it. They really enjoy it. So, come on down to that. And with tantric foreplay, we've got a guide to tantric foreplay, and this is if you want to take your foreplay in a very different direction, in a more tantric direction, in more really deeply soul connected direction, and not just be something you automatically do. If you're looking for something different, a different way to connect with your partner or your to-be partners, this is a great workshop for you, and that's on the 20th of February. And the last workshop I'm going to tell you about is our Tantra 101 for couples. This workshop, I think we've taken almost 400 people through this. Probably 200 couples have gone through this, and we've had amazing reviews. It's really changed people's love lives and sex lives and connections to their partners. So if you're looking for something like that to build, to nourish your connection, your relationship, this Tantra for couples is perfect, and that's on the 20th of March. And just a quick note, if you can't make any of the workshop, the dates don't work for you, still purchase a ticket, because I always send out the recording to whoever's purchased a ticket. So if you purchase a ticket, you'll get the recording afterwards, even if you weren't able to make it live. And I'm always open to any questions about the workshop afterwards as well. So, that's up to your discretion. But there's some great workshops there. So without all the business, you know what you're getting into, this father wound, you might want a pen and pad and really take some notes and really take note of what's this showing up in your life. Without further ado, I'll let you get into the episode. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another wonderful episode. I have a wonderful guest with me, a man whose work just kind of popped up on my feed and just leapt out at me, from the posts, from the vivid colors, but also to the just, it really hit home, the messages. Like when I was reading it, I was like, it's either stuff I've been through myself or stuff I've seen my clients going through as well. So I was just like, after a while, I was like, I have to get this man on my podcast. I just have to reach out and speak to him. And, he happily said yes. And today we have Kevin Benevides. How are you doing today, Kevin?
I'm doing good, David. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm really excited about our conversation today, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to reach out. Sometimes I feel, as we mentioned before, is like you look around the social media world, Instagram, Facebook, and people always talk about social media as such a terrible place, like a lot of bad things happening there and it hurts us. And I always say, I was like, but I meet so many amazing men and so many amazing women and see so many amazing people doing amazing work. And my experience of social media is very much, it's like a place of learning for me, learning and education and growth.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually worked in social media for 3 years before I got into the coaching space, and that's the way I look at it as well. Like it's basically a tool, and you get to decide how you use it. And of course, there's a lot of negativity and hate and bad stuff on social to bring people down, but there's a lot of good. There's a lot that you can learn, a lot of connection, and obviously not in the ways of being physically connected, like next to somebody, but we can really connect with people and have conversations and learn and support each other if we choose to. It's how we choose to show up, right? And that's how I view social media. So I'm glad that you're able to connect with me, and looking forward to what we're able to talk about and support other people who will find us on the internet, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, it's how you use it.
yeah. It's a tool like anything, like anything.
Yeah.
And I guess the question I like to always start with is, come across your account and your wonderful work, and I wonder, how did you come to do the work that you do today?
Yeah, this is not something that I even thought I would ever be in, that's for sure. Um, for the first 31 of my years of my life, it was just, did it exactly as society or the family um, wanted a man to do, in the sense of go to school, get an education, find a girl, get married, have the kids, have the house, do all that stuff. And so that's what I did, and that's the life I led. And neither was it good or nor bad. It was just what it was. But then when I was so back in 2013, my dad got really, really sick. We thought he was going to pass away, or at least I thought he was going to pass away. And in that event of him getting really sick and not knowing the outcome of that, anxiety that I've always lived with, but didn't even know it was anxiety. I just didn't know. I just thought it was a part of myself. Um, Went through the roof. Like my anxiety levels skyrocketed, started having panic attacks. I could not function day to day. From that came obviously also depression, but a lot of childhood stuff that came up with my dad. Now that I'm facing that he was going to pass away. And so it was 6 months of, you know, I say it's a shitstorm. That's the word that I always use. Like it was a shitstorm, emotional and a mental shitstorm. And I had to learn how to deal with that. And I wasn't really dealing with it very well. And then 6 months in, I came to the point where I literally thought I was going to die. And so I have to do something different. I knew I had to do something different. And so my counselor that I was going to see, mental health counselor, he was always suggesting, why don't you try mindfulness? Why don't you try mindfulness? I'm like, what is this mindfulness? No, no, no. I always said no. And then finally one day I was like, okay, what are you talking about? This mindfulness thing? What do I do? And then I reached out to someone who I knew actually taught it. And so as I went to this man to support me, to learn mindfulness, to support me with my anxiety, he also opened the door to sort of like the inner work, to really figure out why I had the anxiety, um, heal the relationship with my dad, or really get to understand my dad so I can understand myself. And then that opened the doors to sort of spirituality, personal development, all that stuff. And within a month, I was like, anxiety levels down. I was feeling so much better. Um, I was just on a new path, and I haven't gotten off of that path since then. I was just really, again, really passionate about just becoming a better version of myself, and just growing and learning about these things that I never knew about. And so I started sharing that online. So I started my page, which was an art project at first, that turned into a Facebook page, a blog, a podcast, all that stuff, which was the Canvas Within. And it was just me sharing my experience of what I was going through, because I was like, if I can do this in a month, not that I was like healed or perfect or whatever. I'm neither right now either, but um, just the fact that how I was living to where I was a month later, I was like, if I can do this, anybody else can. So I just wanted to share what I've learned. And so I started to share that online through my Facebook page, again, through my blog, and it turned out to be a podcast. Um, and I just shared it. And I've been sharing for years and years under the moniker of the Canvas Within. And a few years ago, 5 years ago, I left my 9 to 5 to follow my passions. And then as the years gone by and I'm doing that, I discovered, I don't want to just share the stuff online. I want to actually support people one-on-one. So basically coaching. And so at the end of not last year, so now almost 2 years ago, so the end of 2020, I made a decision to go all in into coaching. And so I did. I went all in. I invested in it, invested in the business, and just started marketing myself as a coach. And then I started specifically talking into men's lives and what they deal with. And of course, what I've dealt with in my life is what I share, and what I support men with in coaching now. So it's been from my own personal transformation, and my life in general is what led me to where I am right now. And I just feel like I can really obviously connect with men, and with everything, like I said, that I've gone through is what I support men with.
Wow. Wow, what a journey. And I love this question, because I think a lot of the time listeners kind of see people on Instagram or podcasts and stuff, and they see them as like these exalted, wise people, and they wonder like, oh, I can never be as smart and wise as this person. And I always say to people, I'm like, I'm no different from you. I just kept trying to be a bit better, or I kept trying to have less pain most of the time, right? We would just want to
Yeah.
experience less
Yeah.
pain. And we just keep going, we keep digging, we keep learning, we keep uncovering things, and it really, starts to make our lives better. And like you said, I love how when I first saw your account, and I was like, the canvas within, and I mentioned it to my partner, and she was like, that's such a beautiful name for doing the work. I was like, yes, that's such a great way to put it, the canvas within. And then to come to realize it was originally an art project.
It was,
Really
yeah, it was an
interesting.
art project where I was creating these like mixed media pieces of art, and then I put quotes that were helping me onto the art. So it was like really fancy memes, if you want to. And that's where it started. It was going to be like I was going to sell this art with these important quotes that I found were important. And so then from that stemmed the name of the first the project. And it was just like, yeah, these are canvases, these are pieces of art, but they're coming from within. Yeah, I literally remember the where I was, the day it was New Year's Day, um, 20, 2014. And I was sitting there trying to figure out the name of this project, and it just literally hit me, and I felt it in my heart. I'm like, that's the name, the Canvas Within. And so I've just stuck with it since then. And really, yeah, I can't, I have a hard time like going away from that name, because I just feel like that just expresses my journey and who I am as well. So
Mm, mm.
yeah.
And, ultimately, we are like canvases. We are,
Yeah.
things are marked upon us. There's stains, there's beauty, there's all sorts which we can't really see. It's like the canvas within us, and all we see
And
is
it's
people's
covered.
actions from that. Yeah.
Exactly. So from there, I developed sort of like the way I express it to people is like, you are the masterpiece, and that masterpiece living within you. But as we grow up, when we're born, masterpiece. That's why, look at a baby. They're a bundle of joy. That's because they're our
Mm,
joy. There's nothing covering that joy. Only as we grow up, and every human being will experience this through our conditioning, family, culture, all this stuff, society, whatever you want to call it, comes into play and starts to cover up the pain, the hurt that we feel, starts to cover up our authentic self, which is our masterpiece. And so when somebody steps into this work and decides, I want to improve upon myself, there's really nothing to improve. There's nothing to um, you're not becoming anything. You're actually unbecoming. You're removing, unlearning, right? So you're removing the layers of programming, of conditioning, of hurt to get to who you've always been. You just haven't been able to feel it, express it, be it, kind of thing. So
mm.
that's sort of how I look at it.
Yeah. It's just the things get in the way, things block us
Yes.
from expressing
Yeah.
ourselves.
100%.
Mm. And we become wounded at some point. Something wounds us along the way, and we hold on to it. We keep it in our hearts. We keep it on some place, and then we try and hide it at the same time as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a big part too, right? Our emotional wounds.
Mm.
And well, sometimes we don't want to keep it. It's just we don't know what to do with it sometimes.
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And today we're gonna talk about the father wound. This is something I saw pop up on your page, and it just felt so alive because I'd spoken to someone on Instagram, and he was describing something very similar and how it's affecting him and his life. And I did kind of thought, I haven't got an episode about this, and it just feels so. It's like that's what's perfect. It's come in front of me. It's perfect to do. Um, so I'd love to get your thoughts on, just for the listeners who don't quite know what the father wound is. Like, what are your thoughts and ideas about what the father wound is for men in particular?
for sure, it's an emotional wound that we carry when our father was not able to provide us the love that we needed, whether it was intentional or unintentional from the father's part, but they weren't able to provide us what we needed as a child due to their own wounding, due to their whatever they were dealing with. And therefore, um, again, we didn't have that relationship, and therefore we were the wounds and the conditioning that our father had was passed on to us. And and therefore, again, we didn't get what we needed, plus we got what he had, in a sense, or we got um, parts of him onto us. And so now we're carrying the wound of, one, not having the father that we truly needed, and two, um, not having the father that we truly needed, and two, now we carry the canvas is now covered with beliefs, especially for men, if we're talking specifically for men, right? A lot of the wounded masculine, if you want to call it that, what we would call now, some people call toxic masculinity. It's just not, masculinity is not toxic. It's the behaviors that we associated with being masculine. And so therefore that was passed on to us by our parents, or by our fathers, I should say, by what they told us, or two, what we saw from them, like what we saw them do. And yeah, sometimes it's not even what they've done to us, but what we see them do or not do to others around us, right? And again, sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's unintentional, but at the end of the day, it's still there. It doesn't matter. That wound exists for a lot of us, and um, a majority of who we've become is based off of what we experienced in our childhood, and with the first real relationships we had, which was with our mother or with our father, right? And for some people, they haven't had a father, And due to the fact that they didn't have the father, that is a wound in itself, and everything that comes from not having a father. And some people have fathers that are present, but that are not present in the ways that they need. And that's what I experienced for myself, was not that my father was not present. He was present, went to work, came home, whatever, right? Like, he was there, but he wasn't there emotionally for me the way that I needed him to be. He didn't do the things that I needed my father, to do for me, which is what all of us men or boys need, right? To be there to teach us how to, how to play sports, and how to, how to show up and fight, but not fight, but protect ourselves. All these things, right? Like how to show up in life and do things, and build and construct things, all these things. And if that person or that father is not there to support them, then we lack that, even though we don't know that at the time. But actually, that's what it is. We're lacking something that we actually need. And so I'm going on a tangent here, but that's how I've seen it, is like, yes, they could be present, but they're not fully present in the way that you need. And so, I can say that I probably wounded my children, and I'm not ashamed of that. And neither am I tooting my own horn, but it's just the fact of the matter. It's just the way things go, because we can't change something that we don't see. And so that's an important piece to consider, is like, your father, if you do have some hurt towards him or towards that relationship, he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to act in those ways. It was just what the best that he could do. Of course, he could have done better, but really, at the end of the day, he didn't. He didn't because he couldn't. And now, as adults, we get to heal that wound and move on from there, not expecting them to change. And that's the important part, is like, or even acknowledge sometimes the pain that they've caused you, again, whether it was directly or indirectly. So that was a long-winded answer to your question.
No, it was great, because it's like one of the first things that you said around, and I've said this to a number of people before, that men or masculinity isn't toxic. It's just men are wounded. They're wounded. They've, as you said, they've taken on the wounds of their fathers, their grandfathers, and down the lineage, and they're just acting out in ways which they think are okay, and they think they should be acting, or they're just acting from a place of pain, and in fact,
Yes.
then causing pain to other people. And it's this part, I think, when we discuss toxic masculinity, I believe that the phrase toxic masculinity, though it encompasses behaviors and so forth, and it's a convenient kind of media sentence.
Label. Yeah.
But I don't think it necessarily helps men become better, because it kind of points a finger. It's like, you're toxic. That's, because we collapse masculinity in men all the time, right?
Yeah, we're together. Or men, which is what you've seen, or we've seen in general in the last, I don't know how many years, is like men abandoning their masculinity even more, because it's unsafe to be a man. So let's just be more feminine, right? And there's nothing wrong with being feminine, but we have both. It's just, we can't just ignore a part of being a human being, right? Like, and again, it's because we've been told that this is not good. So if it's not good to be a man or to be masculine, we're gonna like shy away from that, because we don't want to be bad, right? But the reality is, no, we need those character traits of the masculine. It's just not in the wounded ways that the men in the past have displayed them.
Yeah. And I can look for my own life. You were talking about your experience of your father. My father was like semi-absent. My parents were never married. He was not far away, but I never really saw him. And he wasn't, when he did see him, he couldn't nourish me emotionally or even talk to me as a child. So I always was left with this feeling, and still do in many ways, that he's an absent. But as you put it, it's like they're present physically, but emotionally absent, unable
Yeah.
to kind of give you the emotional support and needs you need, and even support you in the non-emotional things, like you said, like things like teaching you about sports, or teaching you to fight, but not necessarily fighting physically, but to maybe go after things that matter, go after
Yes. Yes.
just causes and things like that, because he was never there to show me those things. And when if there was anything around just causes, I don't think he ever thought about what a just cause was, other than what he wanted, and it's that sort of actions that kind of imprint on us and leave us, as you said, with this lack, a space, a gap, of like, what do I do here? And for many men, we then pick up what people tell us, whether that's like older boys or it's the media as well, when we fill those gaps with those places which are not necessarily grounded in like healthy masculinity or healthy manhood.
That's a big piece. Yeah. When we don't have it, we're going to search for it anyways. Right. And it's going to come from our friends. We can come, like you said, from media. And then another big piece is that when the boy does not have that healthy masculine in his life, he's going to turn to the female in his life, or the females in his life, to teach him masculinity. So now you're learning masculinity from a female perspective. And that's what I've experienced. I was surrounded by women. And so the masculine traits that women will have within them, it's not rooted in masculinity because they're not a man, right? So you learn, you're not really, again, learning a proper way of how to be a man or a masculine man. And one of the things is then you tend to be more feminine. So one of the things that I speak about on my page, because it's one of the things that I coach men with, is breaking free from being the nice guy, right? The nice guy syndrome, which is like a male people pleaser, and what comes from a man's life being that way. And the one of the things that you'll see with a lot of men who is that nice guy is the fact that they didn't have that good role model of their father, and they spent a lot of time with the female, so they learn how to please the females in their life. And there's the people like the pleasing is coming towards, they needed that love, they couldn't get it from the father, so they only had women, so they had to do and be in a certain way to get the love and the attention and the security from the women in their life when they were younger. And so that's where we learned that. And so that's another what's the word I'm looking for, consequence of not having that present father in the ways that we needed it. So there's, and it comes into play in so many different ways for men, or a few different ways, and that's one of the ways, is we turn into like this nice guy. And yeah, anyways, I don't know where that came from, but that's what came out.
No, it's super. It's great because, and we, through this, we learn, as you said, we learn masculinity through the eyes of the women in our lives. But then also, then what we sometimes take on is their wounding of the masculine as well, right? Because
Exactly. Yes.
because I
100%.
had my mother, for instance, she didn't know her father, right? And my grandma didn't know her father, and my mum had me, and then my dad wasn't around. And I was like, huge, surrounded by women. My mum went to church, right? She's a Jamaican woman. She's in church. There's lots of other single mums there. And you learn about men through the eyes of women who are wounded about men. And this is a
Yes.
really dangerous way to
So
learn about men.
you're taking those stories.
Yeah, you learn all men are bad. I'm bad.
Yes, 100%. There you go. Right. It's bad to be a man because my mother and my grandmother is saying how bad, the father was, the grandfather was, all these men are. So I'm not going to be like that guy. So we literally abandon our masculinity because of that, because like it's not safe to be that type of guy. But yeah, it's not healthy. It's not healthy to just sit in the feminine, because we need both. Even a woman needs also a healthy balance of masculine and feminine within her, right? So that's, it's like all this play that happens. Of course, this all happens unconsciously. We have no clue this is going on, but this is what we get to look at when we are adults, and now we like, oh, okay, I want to improve upon this in my life. And when we start getting to the root of it, this is what you start to see, right? This is sort of the work within the coaching that I do with men. It's like, they're not looking, especially for a lot of men that I work with, they're not looking to heal father wounds. they're looking to be more confident. They're looking to improve their relationship with their wife. They're looking to stop being so angry and the consequences that come from that. And then, but when you get to the core of that, it stemmed from somewhere, and a lot of times it stemmed from the relationship with the parents, whether it's the father or the mother. But yeah, they don't come and like, oh, I got a father wound I need to heal and improve my life. No, they're like, no. Some do. Some are like, yeah, like I've had a really bad relationship with my father, and I know that I've been hurt because of our relationship, and I don't want to pass this down to my kids. I've had that, but for the most part, they have no clue about that. And the interesting part, I'll also say, is that a lot of men, again, they did have their dads present, and their dads were there, and their dads provided, materialistically and everything like that. And so then when they again get to the core of their behavior of today, then they're like, oh yeah, my dad didn't say those things that I needed him to say. He pressured me to do this, and that. And it's like, oh shoot, that's where like then they get to the core of it, like, yeah, and then or they're upset, like, yeah, I'm really upset. And then they get to where all this is stemming from, and a lot of it, and it's not to blame every father, every mother, but it just comes back to like our first relationship. That's our first relationship was with our father and with our mother. And so that's where a lot of this stuff stems from, and is from that. And so whether you're intentionally trying to heal the father wound, or you're intentionally trying to do something else, a lot of the work to improve upon yourself or the healing comes back to the father or the mother wound. But we're talking about the father wound here. So yeah, it's so I find it fascinating. But it's like, it's almost like the Matrix sometimes, right? You start to see the code. It's like, oh, everything starts to make sense, right? Like everything's coming together. I get it. I understand now. And and for me, understanding is huge. And I'm sorry, I'm going on a rant. I'm not letting you haven't said anything in a while.
No.
Um, um, yeah, it's like understanding is huge for me. When I can understand something, then I can start to piece things together. I cannot be so not emotional, that emotions are not bad. Emotions are good. But I mean like so reactive to something. Because I can start to see the reasons why um, things happen. People are certain ways, why I am like, why I've behaved certain ways or done or not done certain things. And so you sort of have like the puzzle pieces, and you're like, oh, okay, I can see where everything starts to fit together and where to go from here. Understanding is a huge thing, and that's what I try to do a lot with my content, is to get to people to understand these things so that they can be like, wow, okay, yeah, I've been trying to do this to improve upon my life, but no wonder it doesn't work, because actually I need to be looking here that I never looked.
It's a big thing. People like we think we need to do something over here, like, so for instance, I see for the clients that I get, interestingly, a lot of the father wounds show up with them around an obsession around independence and an inability to be vulnerable. There's two things I see a lot. And they're thinking, oh, independence is really needed. I need to be independent. It's really important, blah, blah, blah. And they're just so fixated on that. And you're like, but you're not seeing where does this come from? And it's like, oh, I don't really know. I've always kind of been this way. And then, as you said, you start to follow the breadcrumbs backwards a little bit, and you start hearing stories, and they start telling you things about how things, maybe they didn't know their fathers at all, or their fathers were very distant emotionally, or whatever it may be. And you're like, okay, I see now. Okay. Do you see how there's a question I often ask, I'm like, so do you see how you're acting very similar to how they were? And they kind of stop and look at you, and they're like, yeah, I've never thought of that before. You're like, yeah. And I'm like, it's okay. It's not a judgment. It's just an observation.
Yeah, an awareness, right? Now we have a choice. We're like, oh, yeah, I'm doing the exact same thing that I didn't like happening to me, right?
Yeah. It's amazing how we do that. Something happens to us that we don't like. Maybe people are emotionally distant with us, or they shun our vulnerability. And then in some kind of perverse way, we then do that same thing to other people in the world, you know, as in a very reactive way, you know, without any kind of consciousness and awareness of what we're doing. We're thinking we're doing something else, but actually what we're doing is exactly the thing we don't want people to do to us.
Yeah. Do unto others. I'm getting religious here. Do unto others as, I don't know. Anyways, I messed that one up.
It's like, do unto others as you would like to be done unto you.
Yes,
Maybe.
onto you. Yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah, so yeah, we don't see that, right? Even that happened to me I don't know if what was last night. My wife's like, can you look at this video and you know, just listen to the information and whatever? And I'm like, yes. And then I'm like, but you need to watch videos that have different point of views and this and that. And I sort of dismissed watching the video. I'm like, wait a second, what I actually was telling her is exactly what I need to do for myself. I need to accept to watch the video because I need to see a different perspective. So like we don't, right? It's the important part is being able to afterwards pause, reflect on what happened, and then acknowledge, oh shit, like I just did that thing. And it's like that's the awareness. Awareness is huge for me, like having that self-awareness, because we're not perfect. Never gonna be perfect. And I'm gonna mess things up. I'm gonna say things that are not aligned with myself, some like my truth and who I am and who I want to be. And then it's like coming back afterwards to be like, oh wow, like I said in this example, it's like, wow, this is what I did was wrong here. Like, and being able to acknowledge that within yourself. Again, it doesn't make you weak, doesn't make you whatever word you want, a negative connotation. It's just you're human, right? You made a mistake, and so now you're owning up to that mistake in a sense. And it's not really a mistake because you're learning from it. So yeah, for me, awareness is huge. And I think that's why mindfulness has been a big part of my life. That mindfulness practice, not just the mindfulness meditation, but the mindfulness practice of being aware of our thoughts and then not being judgmental towards what we notice or what's around us, and just being able to give that space to just see what's there, right? Just like, oh, interesting, right? That's the word I use. It's like, that's interesting. Oh, interesting. Said, oh shit, that's bad or that's good or just interesting. Oh, it's interesting to see how this played out. And then sort of again, I've been using the Matrix kind of analogy a lot lately because I watched all the movies again to watch the newest one. And it's like just stepping back and seeing all the pieces slowly floating around you. And it's like, oh, okay. Putting it all back together. It's like, okay, now I can let everything go back full force in front of me. I can get back into the world or back into my life, back into this conversation with a different perspective. Now I can come back and say, hey, I messed up. And that's what I did yesterday. And that was real. I went to my wife and I said, you know what? I was being, I don't even know the word I used, but I was just like, yeah, this is wrong. You told, that, everything I just said, right? I'm like, I actually want to watch that video. That was not right for me to say that. And that's it. And that's how we learn and we move forward.
Yeah. And that awareness is really the difference between, for me, living a life where we're moving forward and we're feeling happy with our lives, and living a life where you feel stuck and nothing's going the way you want it to, and you feel this anger, you feel frustration. And when we're kind of stuck in that frustration, we have no awareness. We then blame outwardly. We like, it's someone else's fault. There's people doing it to me. Maybe we think it's our wives, our girlfriends, the women we're meeting, our parents, and we kind of lash out. And there's this often an outward expression of anger because we think someone else is doing it to us. We blame the world for our problems instead of looking and taking some control and going, shit, I've got responsibility over all this.
Yeah, it's a big shift that I try to coach on, teach on, and embody within my own life is like going from victimhood to victorhood or empowerment or living with responsibility, full responsibility for self, right? Because what you were talking about, the outwards, like the outward anger, the outward blame, that's victimhood, right? I'm a victim to everything. It was because of this person, because of that person, you made me feel this way. It's victimhood. And you're never going to get anywhere in your life with victimhood. You're going to live a very difficult, challenging, unhappy life when you live in victimhood. And so stopping and being able to, even if you are in the victimhood. So again, years into this work, I'll get into victimhood, but then it's pausing. It's like, oh no, take responsibility. I was blaming for something that there's nothing to be blamed for. And where's my part in this? It's always coming back to self. And it's like, where's my part in this? How can I take responsibility for what I did or didn't do, what I said or didn't say, right? And then moving forward from there. And sometimes, perhaps, yeah, you had no part in this interaction that went wrong per se. But at least you can say and own it and say, no, okay, no, I didn't do anything wrong here. But even coming in and coming at it, or coming back into a conversation with somebody with some compassion and understanding, to not like, be like barking at each other basically with in emotions, right? But always coming back to self and like, okay, how can I take responsibility for what's just happened here? And for me, that's huge. That's very, very important.
Yeah, so that's an important part of growing, for all of us, is that self-responsibility. Because I think we're not we often aren't schooled in that as we grow up, that we are responsible. Like, and it's not fault or blame, because I often, when I say responsibility, people often hear the words fault and blame and they're like, that means I'm bad and wrong. But we're not shown that, like, I'm responsible, I have power. Whereas fault and blame, I always see them as like past tense things, like I did something bad, I am bad. They create shame and guilt. Whereas responsibility is like, oh, this thing happened, I'm responsible, I have power going forward into the future to make a change, to have a different outcome.
Yeah, you said something huge there, is the power of responsibility. So there's the two parts. Yeah, the blame, the shame and the guilt or the blame that you feel for yourself if you take responsibility. Hence why some people don't want to. But almost like we're living in a culture where society where victimhood is praised. But if you think about it, why is that? And you just said it and it came to me. It's like, because when you take full responsibility for yourself, you're powerful. You're a powerful fucking human being.
Yeah.
When you take responsibility for self. And so when you have that power, you're able to do things that others can't, in a sense, like, because they're in victimhood. But if we stay in victimhood, we are sort of like slaves to this matrix of the world, like this world that we live in, where we're supposed to be consumers, and the corporate capitalism and stuff like that, right? We stay a victim, and we keep on blaming because we don't have the power to change our lives. But when we take responsibility, real responsibility, we're now like creators, conscious creators of our life, and we can do whatever the hell that we truly want to. We have the capabilities, especially with our technology now, right? So responsibility holds a lot of power.
Yeah, definitely. It does. And to jump back into the father wound, I have a question, maybe, to see if this comes up in your work as well. I see with the clients that I work with, often when there's a father wound, there's this desperately seeking the love and adoration and acceptance of their father, or even the surrogate elder male role model that kind of starts to occur.
Become the father role model. Yeah, the role takes the role of the father.
Is that something you also see?
Yes. Yeah, that's a huge thing, right? Like, we never got the love from our father. And so everything we do in our life is almost not everything, but like a big part of what we do in our life is to really say, hey, dad, notice me. Do you see me? Acknowledge me, love me. So a lot of men who are successful, or try to be quote unquote the successful, in the sense of like the hustle, the building the business and getting the money, and they do a lot of that because perhaps their father that's what he believed in, right? Or that's how he lived his life, was, make a lot of money for your family, provide, do whatever your dad's belief was and the way he lived. You now go on to life doing similar things, so that you're like, hey, dad, this is what dad liked, this is what got his attention, so I'm going to go do this thing so that I can finally get his attention.
Mhm.
Huge, right? They finally want that. And they also sometimes, if they've been hurt by the father, is like um, they want the father to acknowledge his wrongs,
Mhm.
right? The pain that he's caused. And I've seen that so much with a lot of the men that I've worked with. And it comes down to, can you be okay with your father never giving you what you still want?
Mhm.
Can you be okay with him never saying I'm sorry, never saying I love you, never giving you the time or the attention that you want? Because that might never come. And so
Mhm.
are you going to sabotage the rest of your life because of that? Or can you come to acceptance of that? Do still the work, the healing work within yourself, but know that maybe that time will never come for your dad to give you what you wanted, whatever that was. But yeah, 100% that's a big part that I see.
Yeah. I can tell you almost something that's almost comical when I mention it now. You know, for my father who was absent in my life, I went on to do a degree in computer science. And my dad never really told me what he did. When I was 18 years old, he never really explained what he did for a living. He just said he did something with computers. I
Mhm.
later went on, worked in the tech industry for many years. And one day I asked my dad, you know, what he did. And his job was like the job I sit next to and work with day in, day out.
Wow.
It was almost laughable at the time. I was like, wait, I've been, you know, like many men with a father, and he's like, I don't want to be like my father. That was like my mantra for so many years. I don't want to be like my father. I don't want to be like my father.
Yes. Yes. That was me too. So what you're saying is that you ended up being basically like your father, like you without even knowing, in a sense. Like you got the career, very similar career or job like your father. That's so interesting. Um, but yeah, that's another thing, right? Like, so then you'll have the man or the boy who turns into a man who sees his dad as the role model, and like everything that dad does, I'm gonna do because he's your hero in a sense. Even if that guy is doing um, destructive, unhealthy behaviors, you still see him as a hero. Like, so it could be like, yeah, he's a hard worker. This is a big thing. So he's a hard worker and all this thing, and he is present, but obviously he's not emotionally present. But like, he's an alcoholic, or he drinks lots of alcohol, or he doesn't take care of his health. That boy turned into a man will now live a similar life where he will like be that hard worker, and but then come home and drink and not care about his health and all that sort of thing. And so they praise the father, and then so there's that one part, and still unhealthy, right?
Mm.
Because your dad's not living a healthy life, you just think he is, right? And not saying that he's a bad guy or anything like that, but still not you're not still living your best life by following his steps. Then you have the other side, which is what we were talking about a minute ago, is where you grow up to the point where you're like, I never want to be like my dad. I don't want that. And that's what happened for me when I stepped into my 20s and I was in my relationship, which is relationship with my wife that I have now. Um, and thinking about having a family and all that. And I was like, I want to do everything opposite of my dad. Anything that he did, I didn't want to do. If he smoked and he drank, I didn't want to smoke and drink. He wasn't around to take care of his kids, to do like take him to sports. That's what I wanted to do. He wasn't there to have dinner with us. I wanted to have dinner with my, like, in those little, even those little things, but everything I wanted to do opposite of my dad. And then as the years went by, and then when this thing happened, when I was 31, and my dad got sick, and I started to look at it, all this stuff, I was like, started to sit back, and as the time went by and I was doing the work on myself, it's like, holy shit, I turned into my dad, but not in the ways, in those ways, but like the wounds that he carried, I carry. The way that he reacts to people, I react to people. It's like,
Mm.
I say that was my thing. That was my, what you were saying. That's how it came up for me. I was like, shit, I'm just like my dad. Like everything I didn't want, I turned into in that way, in the sense that the way I acted, and because we were carrying the same sort of wounds, right? Um, and so that was an interesting part. And that's again, something like what we start to observe when you do this work, and especially focus on this stuff, is like there's going to be the side where the dad was the hero, and then the other side where you're just like, I want nothing to do or nothing to be like him. So but it all comes back to there's hurt there, right? Either way, there's some sort of emotional hurt. We're not aware of it. Like, we're so unconscious to these things for the most part.
Yeah, totally unconscious, and it's hard to see it because can be painful, like when you're admitting that, that your reactions are like your father's, right? Like, even it's something I similarly experienced, was like I was living my life a certain way in my 20s, and my 20s were like lots of womanizing and being with lots of women and lots of dating. And I look and like, oh, my father's got 5 kids and he's never been married. And I literally, one day I was sitting in my flat. I have a flat back in London. I was sitting in my 1-bedroom flat, and I was probably about 26, and I was sitting there on my own, and it just hit me one day. I was just like, the thing I don't want to be, I'm on a road to becoming, because I'm so focused on not becoming that thing, which is being like my dad. My dad lives in a 1-bedroom flat, has done for most of my life on his own. And I was like, I'm sitting in my 1-bedroom flat and I'm doing all this womanizing and seeing women and having lots of sex. And I'm like, if I carry on in this trajectory, I will be my dad at 50, 55, 60 years old.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but I know better.
Yeah, that's huge, man. Yeah, that's a big awakening, right? To notice that, acknowledge it, and then choose, right? Again, awareness gives us choice. And then I would say, what was your choice from that when you noticed that?
Yeah, I just I stopped focusing. It's funny, actually. I stopped focusing on all the bad things about him. That was one of the things that really made a difference. It's like focusing on different other things. It's like, and also asking the question to myself is like, what man do I want to be? Like, what man do I want to be? Not what man do I not want to be? Because I see it's something that I do, and I see a lot of men do this. They can tell you what they don't want to be. But
They
if you
don't know
said,
what they want to be.
what do you want to be? Because as one of my my old mentors would always say, is like, your focus creates your reality, right? So if you are focused on not becoming a person, your eyes are like dead on it, like you're looking at it, like you're going down a ski slope and you're looking at a tree, right? One of my clients is a ski instructor who's like, when people go down ski slopes, if they're afraid of the tree, they stare at the tree the whole way. Because you know what happens 99% of the time? They end up hitting the tree, because your focus creates your reality. You head towards where your focus is. So we have to switch our focus, and focus on what we want to be instead of what we don't want to be, to create the lives that we actually want.
100%. That's huge, man. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Even for me, it's like, yeah, it's so true. It's like, what are we focusing on? And sometimes we know exactly what we don't want, and we keep on focusing. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want that. And it keeps on coming because we're attracting it. It's like, no, what do I want? Like, what is clear? What do I want? Who do I want to be? Like you're saying, and then going from there. And I think it's a lot of this coming back to never dealing with that emotional pain, because you feel emotionally a certain way. You're like, I don't want that. I don't. And what you're trying to say is, I don't want to feel this way. Right? I don't want to feel this way anymore. And so what's coming from this, that's coming up, what I'm saying is like, when you look and heal that, what you no longer want to feel, you no longer are going to be I don't want this, you're going to be focused on something different, because the emotion is, sort of that pain is gone, right? That hurt is gone. So now you don't even have to focus on what I don't want, because what I don't want is no longer with me, because that's at the core. That's what you actually don't want. You don't want to feel a certain way. And then we change our trajectory to actually what we do want, because we have a whole other a new presence, a new energy, a new we feel lighter, right? Like emotionally lighter within ourselves. And so we can choose something different.
Yeah, we have space. Yeah, we have space. We have the space to let in something else, and we clear through some of that kind of old emotional debris that's been sitting with us for, it's not even just been sitting with us, right? Some of this emotional debris has been sitting through our lineage for hundreds of years, potentially, depending, really. and it's kind of come to our doorstep, and it's kind of sitting on us. And if we do the work to kind of clear that, to rubbage through that, we can start to have the space to actually go, oh wait, well, I've done with feeling that. What would I like to feel? I don't need to battle against this thing. I trying to push it down, trying to push it
Push it
down,
down.
push it
Yes.
away. We can go, oh, what would I like to feel? We almost, like a lightness, we can look upwards to something else.
100%. Great way of saying it. And that's the huge thing with men. Like a big part is for men, for the most part, we carry so much emotional baggage with us because our emotions are unmanly, right? Like we're anger is good. Anger is good with men. Other than that, everything else we should just stuff away for the most part, right? And so we carry this within us, and then when we when we create that space within us, what my coach has once said to me, actually said many times to me, is it's almost like a emotional real estate. These emotions that we've been pressing down, oh, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. It's taking up space within us, like this real estate. And we have all this pristine real estate that is like rubbish, like it's like garbage, because we haven't made the space, we haven't cleared up the area to let the gardens flourish and the house to really come to bloom or fruition or to be good, is because we have all this other space taken up by all these emotions we won't let come out. So we have to make that space within us by addressing it, by processing it, by letting it out. And again, that's a huge part that I support men with. And I think it's important for men in particular is to get in touch with these emotions, which is a lot of time guilt, shame, sadness, right? Anger, even anger. Although we can express anger, there's sometimes a lot of anger that is suppressed, and so getting in contact with that and having tools to be able to process that, I guess it frees us up. It frees us up now, and now we can see, like, there's no point in, like, a lot of people try to do certain type of um, personal development work and change their mindset and change all these things, but you're trying to change your mindset, but your body's telling you something otherwise, right? Because your mindset is your brain, right? You're coming from here, so you're trying to change how you believe, but how you feel is still the same way. What's in your body, your nervous system, all that is still the same, and that's running a big part of your life. And so we have to do all, like, we don't have to do, we get to do is the work of tapping into the body, because men live, I always say the men live like neck up, shoulder up, right? We are disconnected from our shoulders down, in a sense, or our midsection. We're connected to the other part below our waist, right? But we're not connected to what's going on in our heart, in our literally our gut, like all that, the nervous system, everything. We need to get in touch with that. And when we get in touch with that, then we can open up the space. We can't even be authentic, because I feel as in our authenticity comes from our heart space, come from our intuition, our gut feeling, right? We say a gut feeling, or yeah, right? It's a gut feeling. Well, you can't feel something, you can't get the answers from your intuition if you're not willing to feel it, because it's a gut feeling, it's a feeling. But if you cut yourself off from feeling, you're never going to get those answers. You're always going to be living from your head. Hence why men overthink a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we don't have any other way of processing things, because again, we've been conditioned to not feel. We need to get back to feeling. And again, coming back to full circle where we started with, like, the definition of masculinity, feeling doesn't mean you're not masculine, right? Getting in touch with your emotions does not mean that you're not masculine. I actually feel like you're a more powerful masculine man when you can harness the power of your emotion, because your emotion is actually just signposts, it's just guides, signals. But if you're not listening to those signals, you can never harness where it's telling you to go and what it's telling you to do. So yeah.
Yeah, no, because it's funny. That was the next question I was going to ask, is like how we can start to heal from the father wound is like, you know, and you said it's like feeling is a big part of it, you know, learning to feel our bodies, to move our bodies, to just realize that there's something that exists below our neck that has wisdom for itself and that can actually help us reach and get to the places we want to get to, you know. And it's like you said it really well, like a lot of people get into personal development work, and I did myself. I started off around money, like I want to make more money, I want to be more successful, and a lot of that is just very, you know, as you say, very heady, like do this
Yes.
other thing, think differently. But it's really hard to start thinking differently, right, if your emotions are still like going haywire. When you try and make lots of money, your emotions are telling you, I don't deserve this, I'm worthless, right? No matter how much you try and think differently, you know, when you're asking your boss for a pay rise or you're starting your own business, when you're doing that, your whole nervous system, your whole body is rejecting the idea you're trying to put forward, right? It will make you sick, it will have you faint and fall over and all sorts of things, right? Because it can't handle the thing you're doing, because it goes so deeply against the emotional kind of weight of what you
Yeah, the
think of
imprint,
yourself.
the emotional imprint that you've had for so long from these things that happen in our childhood, from when we grew
Mm,
up, even if it's not childhood, adolescence, right? For the most part. And not that people don't have adverse, like tragic events in their adulthood, but we are programmed in the first 7, 8 years, right? So that's the imprint. And so if your body doesn't feel safe, that's a big thing that I talk about too, is like to be authentic. For a people pleaser to be authentic, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable with being authentic, because for so long being able to speak your truth um, doesn't feel right, because
mm,
initially whatever the initial event or events in your childhood happened, you speaking your truth caused some sort of discomfort or pain or hurt, and so your body remembered that, your nervous system remembered that. And so now every time you go to speak your truth, to say what you actually want to say, your body's like, you're not safe, don't do it,
mm,
right? And your ego is protecting. So that's your inner child running your life, and your ego is protecting your inner child. So your ego just wants to stay alive. And so your ego is like, no way, don't fucking do this, don't go say that, don't do these things. And that's why, like you're saying, you're going to go ask for a raise. Asking for a raise and speaking what you want for yourself is so foreign to your body,
mm.
and it's a threat, right? Like you literally, your body thinks that that person's going to attack you and harm you, and you're no longer going to be safe. We want safety, right? So
Yeah.
it's like training our nervous system to come back to safety, that we are safe. So when you start in this example of speaking your truth or saying what you actually want to say, as you do that, even if it's a little steps, you're proving to yourself and you're proving to your body that you're going to be okay, right? So even if you feel that discomfort, it's like, okay, I can deal with this discomfort, I don't have to run from the discomfort. And then the more time you do that, the discomfort starts to lessen, because it's like, oh, I'm okay, I'm good, right? So that's a big piece. But yes, men, we have to come back to the feeling. That's how we start to heal the wounds. And it's even expressing the words. If going back to what you said in a minute or two ago, is really finally saying what you haven't said to your dad. And it doesn't have to be directly to him, it could be in the coaching session, it could be writing a letter, but to actually verbalize, that's you're making reality, you're bringing it to life, what you've been feeling for so long. And that is huge for a man to finally just vocalize how he felt. I wish you would have done this. It hurt me when you did that. And just keep on going and let this all come out. And so when we can speak it into existence, it comes out as like literally we're getting it out of us, right? Even writing is a different thing, because you're actually getting it from within you out onto the physical world. And so it's helping you. That's the processing, right? So that has to happen for men. And that's, again, a big piece where I start. Once we know where we're heading, where you are right now, let's talk about where we are, and let's get to the wounds. Where's the wounds? Where are you hurt? And let's start to get these things out. Let's get to these emotions and then get this out. Once we start getting these things out, then we, again, like I said earlier, we free up that space to then, okay, this is what I want. This is the actions I want to take. Now I'm able to do that because I don't have this stuff holding me back as much. Not that a couple of weeks of doing this work, you're going to be fully healed. But I mean, at least you've already created some of that space within you to do it.
Yeah. Doing that healing is, it's just so vital. And like you said, like getting to the feeling is so important. One of the ways that has made a real massive difference in my life over the last few years has been like men's retreats and men's groups. And I think I remember noticing you have a men's group, the man within.
Online men's group, yeah.
Yeah, and the
The
power
man within, yeah.
of men's groups where you can go and you can show up and you can say, I'm with other men, especially if we're men who our wound is around being scared of other men or scared of being around other men and speaking our truth to other men. And we can it's like a practice ground for us, to do these exercises where we imagine the man in front of us is our father and we get to say the things that we want to say to them, and maybe there's a pre-agreed response, like, okay, I'm sorry, or thank you for telling me. It can be incredibly healing for us, for our minds, for our bodies, just to be in that space of men where we can be seen and heard and accepted.
Yeah, 100%. The men's group has, like, the one that I've run now since May of last year, the craziness to see, in a good way, like to see what comes out of that space sometimes, when men can hold other men accountable, when men could be there in a non-judgmental way for another man. And this hardly happens for us, right? I put out a post last week or 2 weeks ago about, men, we need to open up with the men in our life and have real conversations beyond sports, complaining about life and all that stuff. But for the most part, a lot of men they're not open to that. So it's hard to do that. But when you come into these spaces where intentionally everybody who's coming into that men's group is wanting that, whether they're comfortable with it or not, but they actually want that. But now you're in that space. So now, okay, now let's talk. What's going on? Right? That's literally the group is not very complicated. We get in there after we check in, or we do a grounding, we do a check-in, and then it's like open space. What's on your heart? What's on your mind? What's going on in your life? Unmute, start talking, and to have that man to express. And even before the holidays, this one guy joined in, and he was just talking about how he hated the Christmas and why he hated Christmas. And I was trying to support him, or trying to support everyone with the holidays, because it can be a tough time. And so anyways, this guy's talking, and he just finally gets out all these things that's been bothering him. And just talking that's all he needed, somebody to listen. And nobody was judging him. And then when he's like, yeah, what do you guys think? Then we came in and like, okay, look at it this way. What do you think about that? But just to be in that space and know that nobody's going to judge you for what you're saying, and knowing that other men, another big piece that I've seen with the men's group is that these men start to realize, shit, I'm not alone in this. What I'm going through, a lot of these guys are going through, or they've gone through. Because we sometimes forget that we're human, right? We forget that we're living this experience of life. And it's, of course, the circumstances could be different in our lives, but the overall theme and things that we deal with is very similar. And so when they get in the space and see other men who have beards and or whatever, right, they all look, we look manly, and then we're talking about these things. It's like, oh shit, yeah, man, I dealt with that. And there's been times where like actual meetings where the guys are just like, wow, they'll literally say, wow, like, we're all dealing with the same shit. Like, yeah, man, we're dealing with the same shit. So that's the power I see also. And of course, there's different types of men's group that they do a bunch of different things, but sort of what I bring to the table with my men's group so far, the support group, it's a support group. I'm there to support, right? And so, yeah, powerful stuff.
Yeah, it gives men a space, like you said, just to be themselves. It's something I've seen with coaching. Sometimes someone asked me what I do for a living, and I said, "Oh, I'm a surrogate friend." And then
Yeah,
was like, "What?"
a good
I was
friend,
like,
eh?
"Yeah." I was like, "Oh, I'm a coach." I was like, "But a lot of the time, a lot of men, they just want someone they can speak to about things, who's not going to judge them, that can give them a different perspective, because we have all the information we need to be successful and stuff like that. But a lot of the time, we just have no one we can kind of just like say, this is what's going on for me, this is how I'm feeling, and this is why. And for that person to go, okay, thank you, cool. Because everyone else in our lives has got some sort of vested interest in us.
Yes.
They
Yes.
either they want us to feel a certain way, or they don't want us to feel a certain way, or they react to what we're saying in some way. So it means that anyone else in our life, when we think about talking to them and think about, just sharing who we are, we have to then consider, how are they going to take what I'm going to say? What they're going to make that mean? How will they judge me? How will they react to me? And for a lot of men, that kind of working out they have to do gets in the way of them ever opening up and speaking.
Yeah, 100%. And for the most part, that we can expect the people in our lives to handle what we're going through, because they're going through it as well, right? They're going through their own thing. Not saying that you can't have a partner or a good friend or a family member that is there for you. Of course, we have these and we need these people in our lives. But when we want to really dig deep into what's going on in our life or what's been going on with us that we haven't been talking about, it's so important to reach out to that professional, whether it's a clinical professional like a therapist or a counselor, or come to a coach, because we're literally there for this, right? Like, we're there to support you, to listen to you, to not judge you. I guess one thing that I put out there for my clients, like, I'm not here to judge you. I will tell you the truth, what I see, but I'm not going to judge why you did it or didn't do it, or said or didn't say it. But you have that space now to talk, and now I know where you want to go. So from my perspective, and that's another thing, is the perspective, right? From my perspective, I can now guide you to work on what you need to work on to move forward, right? For coaching is to move forward. Therapy is just like, we just talk, get things out, blah blah blah. I'm not saying that some therapists don't want you to move forward, but for coaching is like, yes, we're getting to heal, but we're going to heal and we're moving forward, right? We're going to, what you start with is not how you're going to end. You're going to be in a better place because you're actually going to take action steps forward. But in what I was saying, really quickly, is the perspective, right? When we're living our lives, we can only see from our perspective. And sometimes we're in this box and we are in this problem, which is this box is on us, this box is this problem, and we can't see anything because we're only see from this level. When you bring somebody else in, that other person could be on the top of the wall, and he can say, oh no, like you haven't been looking at this thing that you can't see from here. Right? So you have somebody else's perspective. And another way that I say, I sort of approach this is like, I'm no, like we talked about earlier, is like, I'm no better than anyone. I'm not, I'm not better than any of my clients. What I am is perhaps a couple of steps forward on this path of life than they are on this certain topic or this certain area of our life. We're all going up the same mountain. The difference is I've gone around certain boulders that you haven't. And so now, because I've gone around it, I know how to get around it. So I can now come back, put my hand out and say, hey, come this way. This is the way. And then we all can continue up this path in our life. And then perhaps in the future, I'll be stuck behind a boulder and you'll be ahead of me. Who knows? Right. But that's all it is coming back and just saying, hey, I know how to get past this obstacle. Come with me. This is how we do it. And just trust. And then we're together. We're doing this together. And I never want to be better than anyone. I'm on the same page, right? I'm here to support you. I'm no better than you. And so, anyways.
That's such a beautiful way to put it there, because it is. That's how you guide and show people and do perspective, as you said, just when you've seen a path, or sometimes you don't even have to walk the path. Sometimes you just have to be someone else looking from a different angle on the path and say, you can't see that because you're lying on the floor. I can see this other thing because I'm standing on the ladder and I can see a bit further on. And it really is
Yes.
I think that's the thing sometimes, when people come for coaching. I think there's this idea of coaching being like telling what to do. I'm going to tell you what to do and how to live. And I'm often like, no, I don't need to tell you what to do, because you know what to do. You might not be able to see what I can see, and I can just give you some of my sight. It's like you get to borrow my eyes.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. You get this. Yeah. Help you to peel that layer off. You just need that support to know how to, in a sense. But what you want to discover, what you want to bring to life because of the peeling of that layer, that's up to you. You get to decide, and I'm just here to sort of like guide you in that, right? And so yeah, that's all how I look at it. I'm not here to give you the answers. I have some tools that I can support you, because again, I know what you've gone through, and this has supported me. Here are some of the tools. Let's do this. This is what is needed. But what comes from that, what you get to do because you no longer carry this emotional baggage with you, that's up to you, right? You get to choose what you want for yourself, and I'm just here to support you with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so powerful, so powerful. Kevin, thank you so much. The time has just flown by.
Flown by, yeah.
Could probably sit here and talk for another 2 hours easily. But yeah, it's been such an incredible conversation. It's just been so informative. I've learned so much. It's been beautiful talking to you, and I imagine the listeners are feeling this way as well. How can people get into contact with you? How can people come to work with you?
For sure. The best way right now is through my Instagram page or even Facebook page, which is just at the Canvas Within, or search out Kevin Benevides. And also on Instagram, I have a page. It's The Man Within, which is the men's work. There's a page on that. I'll be getting that running up soon again. But right now, it's just really my Instagram, my social media pages is the best way to get a hold of me. There are links there. You can DM me. Check out my content and go from there. But yeah, I really appreciate you inviting me on, David, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I love how it just flourished and went on its own path, and I hope that everybody who's listening or has listened gets some value from it and to support them in their life.
Yeah, and I'm sure, listeners, I'm sure Kevin would love to hear from you, myself as well, to hear, what did you learn from this episode? What are you taking away? What are you able to now maybe see for yourself in your life with your own father, maybe, or just, what's going on in your life, and maybe you took some action points away around how to heal and how to move forward. Just let us know about those.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, always. I love feedback. Love to know how people take the information that they heard and apply it, or how it's helped them.
Yeah, awesome. Kevin, well, big thank you to you for showing up and just being so wonderful, so generous with your time and your energy. Yeah, cheers, brother.
No problem, man. It was my pleasure. Thank you, David.
Cool, thank you. And thank you, listeners, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll be back next week.